So I want to thank the music team for that great introduction. And also Robin for reading. I just love the way she reads with so much joy and emphasis. So I had a congregant ask me about some of the ways that we define ourselves as a community. And this series for August, Who We Are, was born. My vision is that this series helps give us a better picture of what the Center for Spiritual Living in Southeast Louisiana actually stands for and what we embrace as we come together, as well as when we're moving through our daily lives. So you hear me state each week in the opening that we're radically inclusive spiritual renegades, healing hearts and creating community. And our members are steeped in conscious spiritual living. So I plan to use those 5 things for the 5 weeks of the month to explain each of those concepts. So today we're starting with the first one, radically inclusive, and precisely what that means for our community. So your question for the day is this: what's the one thing that you might do or be so that you recognize that there is no individual good? Knowing the watchword is inclusion. So one more time. What's the one thing that you might do or be so that you recognize that there is no individual good? Knowing that the watchword is inclusion. So we all know what inclusive means. It's the definition, the dictionary defines it as encompassing everything concerned. However, you might be wondering what we mean when we say we're radically inclusive. And before I explain what it means to me as the spiritual leader of this community, I thought I'd let you see what some of our congregants had to say about it.
Hello, I am Robin Carpenter Briscoe, and it's funny, when I was asked this question about radical inclusivity, I had a reaction to the word radical, and I realized that to me, radical, the word itself felt like a fist, and that didn't feel right. And then when I expressed this, Reverend Larry said to me, radical is extensive, profoundly. That's really where the word comes from. That's what it's about. And so profoundly inclusive, extensively inclusive, that feels exactly like what being here is, because I am very much myself when I arrive. I am a Black lesbian that moved to the South from California, and I was worried, and then I got here and I was welcomed, and it was wonderful and genuine and absolutely radically inclusive.
Radically inclusive to me means that we are really accepting everyone, regardless of race, creed, color, gender identity, religion, anything. I mean, really, because we are all one. And since we are all one, we should accept everybody. And that means that we just don't say that, we do it. And we walk our walk. We don't just talk our talk. That's who we are.
Good afternoon. I am here to talk about CSL, SELA, S-E-L-A, and why this community is radically inclusive. I know for a fact that this organization accepts people no matter what their race or creed or belief or persuasion or background, for exactly who they are. And everyone is welcome. So what makes that different from someone saying, you know, everyone is welcome, is that it doesn't matter how radical you are, how different you are, or feeling like you may be unacceptable. This is a radically inclusive organization that welcomes you with open arms and says, we accept you just as you are.
I believe it's significant that we say we're radically inclusive, because as Robin was saying earlier, radically means profoundly, extensively. It means thoroughly, wholly, completely. And that means there's no room for exclusion. When I was creating this community, my vision was that no matter who entered our sanctuary, they would be welcomed with open arms and with total acceptance. And for me, that's being radically inclusive. I have a little story that's written by Dr. Seuss, and it's called The Sneetches. The Sneetches. Now, the star-belly Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain-belly Sneetches had none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small, you might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the star-belly Sneetches would brag. We're the best kind of Sneetch on the beaches. With their snoots in the air, they would sniff and they'd snort. We'll never have nothing to do with those plain-belly sort. And whenever they met some, when they were out walking, they'd hike right on past them without even talking. When the star-belly children went out to play ball, could a plain-belly get in the game? Not at all. You only could play if your bellies had stars, and the plain-belly children had none upon theirs. When the star-belly Sneetches had Frankfurter roast, or picnics or parties, or marshmallow roast, they never invited the plain-belly Sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark of the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they created them year after year. Then one day, it seems, while the plain-belly Sneetches were moping and doping along on the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. My friends, he announced in a voice clear and keen, my name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean, and I've heard of your troubles. I've heard you're unhappy, but I can fix that. I'm the fix-it-up chappie. I've come here to help you. I have what you need, and my prices are low, and I work at great speed, and my work is 100% guaranteed. Then quickly, Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine, and he said, you want stars like a star-belly Sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right aboard. So they clambered inside, then the big machine roared, and it clonked, and it bonked, and it jerked, and it burked, and it bopped them about, but the thing really worked. When the plain-belly Sneetches popped out, they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon theirs. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start, we're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now, you snooty old smarties, and now we can go to your Frankfurter parties. Good grief, groaned the ones who had stars at the first. We're still the best Sneetches, and they are the worst. But now, how in the world will we know, they all frowned, if which kind is what, or the other way around? Then came up McBean with a very sly wink, and he said, things are not quite as bad as you think. So you don't know who's who? That is perfectly true. But come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best Sneetches on beaches, and all it will cost you is $10 eaches. Belly stars are no longer in style, said McBean. What you need is a trip through my star-off machine. This wondrous contraption will take off your stars so you won't look like Sneetches who have them on theirs. And that handy machine, working very precisely, moved all the stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then with snoots in the air, they paraded about and they opened their beaks and they let out a shout. We know who is who, now there isn't a doubt. The best kind of Sneetches are Sneetches without. Then, of course, those with stars all got frightfully mad. To be wearing a star now was frightfully bad. Then, of course, old Sylvester McMonkey McBean invited them into his star-off machine. Then, of course, from then on, as you probably guess, things got into a horrible mess. All the rest of that day, on those wild, screaming beaches, the fix-it-up chappie kept fixing up sneetches. Off again, on again, in again, out again. Through the machines they raced round and about again, changing their stars every minute or two. They kept paying money. They kept running through, until neither the plane nor the star bellies knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then, when every last cent of their money was spent, the fix-it-up chappie packed up and he went. And he laughed as he drove in his car up the beach. They never will learn. No, you can't teach a sneetch. But McBean was quite wrong. I'm quite happy to say that the sneetches got really quite smart on that day. The day they decided that sneetches are sneetches, and no kind of sneetch is the best on the beaches. That day, all the sneetches forgot about stars, and whether they had one or not upon theirs. So while the sneetches might not have said it directly, they became radically inclusive that day. It is unfortunate that they had to spend all of their resources before they got to that point. And what I've noticed is sometimes it takes that spiritual 2x4 before we wake up to the obvious, to whatever is staring us right in the face. Anybody else ever had that problem? In our reading today, Holmes wrote that there is no individual good, and that the watchword is inclusion. This concept is extremely critical as we speak of being radically inclusive, because it's not a sacrifice to be that way. Rather, it's a blessing to all of us, because there is no individual good. Ernest Holmes founded this religion on tolerance and on inclusion. He stated more than once in his writings that the infinite is all-embracing. The infinite is all-embracing. So in founding this center in Louisiana in the Deep South, where there's so many religions that are based on dogma that is not inclusive, it was extremely important to me that we be radically inclusive. It's important that no one walk through our doors or connect with anyone from this center in any way without feeling a sense of inclusion and absolute acceptance. Eckhart Tolle wrote, "To offer no resistance to life is to be in a state of grace, ease, and lightness. This state is then no longer dependent upon things in a certain way, good or bad. And no resistance to life is what being radically inclusive is about. Acceptance of you is not based on you being a certain way, that you have a certain background or a certain income or a specific skin tone or a specific education, or anything else that's part of our human appearance on this planet. It's about who you are as an expression of the divine. Are you aware that if you take a drop of water out of the ocean and analyze it, the composition of that drop is the same as every other drop in the ocean? And here's the important thing. It takes all the drops to make up the ocean. We live in a world that is made up of individual drops of the divine, unique expressions of the one life that is each of our lives, individually and collectively, just as the drops of water in the ocean. Ernest Holmes, in A New Design of Living, wrote this: "If we once let ourselves get past the outward appearance of the individual, we come to understand that life at the center of its being is the same as at the center of our being. Life which is never in conflict with itself, never in a state of disharmony." And Ernest Holmes went on to say, "You need never view human personality as something unreal or unworthy, but rather as an individualization of the divine. It's the universal spirit that is incarnated in each one in a unique way, and that gives warmth, color, and variation to that which otherwise would be an eternal monotony. Can you imagine a world of only yous? I think that would be a really scary thought. But I'm proud to say that we here are radically inclusive, that we leave no room for doubt. It doesn't allow us to be like the Sneetches at the beginning of the story, looking for some outward sign for someone to be accepted. Ernest Holmes also wrote, "It has been said that we know God only insofar as we can become God." So how can we get to know God if we're only willing to accept a small portion of the people on the planet? Because they're all God. Holmes also wrote, "If our human relations are to mean the most to us, we must sense that there is hidden within, around, and through each of us a divine presence manifesting itself in infinite variations, the same impulse, the same love in life, but never quite alike in any two persons." So how do we go about sensing that divine presence that's hidden within, around, and through each of us, of which we're all a part? How do we go about embracing the infinite variations of love and life that walk this planet? We become radically inclusive. We recognize that the same love in life is hidden within, around, and through each person on this planet. Everything we see, touch, smell is made from the same stuff. It comes from the same source. And it doesn't matter how it shows up or what we call it. The key to living a radically inclusive life is to recognize that there is no separation in the eyes of the divine, that there is only one life. So I'm going to challenge you this week to release any belief that you have that there is a need for exclusion, to release any resistance to inclusion. In this philosophy, we believe that all things begin in thought, which is then followed by an understanding of what you want to have happen. You can be, do, and have anything you want. And if you want to be radically inclusive, let it begin in your thought. Let go of any exclusion that you might have had in the past. And by the way, no beating yourself up about it or feeling guilty about the fact that in the past you might have been exclusive in some way. Just let go of it. Release the past. Begin to live from this moment on with the concept of radical inclusivity. In The Science of Mind, we read that hate begets hate, and strife produces strife. Love alone overcomes all and justifies the eternity of her dominion. So let's pray. It is such a wonderful thought to recognize that one life that is God, that is our life right here and right now. That connection we have as an expression of that divine. Knowing that in this radical inclusion, we are just being who we've come here to be. What I know to be the truth is that each of us has within us that ability to see that what's manifesting within, through, and out each person is that same impulse, that same love and light, that same alikeness, and yet a little bit of uniqueness in each of us. So we recognize right now that each of us is fully an expression of the divine, that there is indeed, like the Sneetches, no difference. We're all just Sneetches on the beaches of this beautiful planet. So I am grateful. I'm grateful for this opportunity to come today and really explain to us who we are as a center. I'm grateful for this wonderful planet that we live on and all the diversity that makes it definitely not monotonous. And I'm grateful to remember that the God without is the God within me, and the God within you, and the God within everybody on this planet. And it's from all that gratitude that I just release these words into the law of mind, spirit, and action, because I know the truth. God has already seen this. The divine has already said yes to it. And any changes that we are desiring in our thoughts have already been called done, and they're happening in reality. So I can just say amen, and we can affirm it together. And so it is. And so the offertory song, which is coming up, it's just an opportunity for you to think about the many blessings that we have on this planet and to circulate your good into this community. And we appreciate that.